Hey everybody, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today I have Ryan Estis. So Ryan and I are out there on the speaking circuit a lot. Ryan is one of the top speakers on sales and leadership. And I've been really looking forward to this because this is like getting a keynote from Ryan and Gucci. We talk about trust and high performance teams and this ability to have safety, psychological safety. We really talk about connection though. You know, what are we seeing out there in the world? How do we get people to connect? And pouring happiness. Wait till you see this viral video of Ryan at Starbucks pouring happiness with Lily. Okay, let's dive in. We're going to have a good fun one today. Glad to be here. Ready? Hit it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today I have Ryan Estis. Ryan, I've been dying to get together with you for a lot of reasons, okay? And I'm so excited for my audience to get a chance to get exposed to you and the impact that you make on people's lives. In fact, that word impact is part of your brand, right? Brace for impact, or prepare for impact. Tell me about that. First off, welcome to the zone.
Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I love the work you're doing. Was stoked to finally have this conversation. And yeah, to me, impact is what it's all about. My whole mission when exiting out of corporate and going into this kind of work that I'm doing now, consulting, research, and speaking, was really to have a broader impact on organizations, my customers, and the world. And so I publish a newsletter every week called Prepare for Impact. I'm preparing for impact each and every day. And I hope the people that are interested in what I'm doing are also more prepared for impact after we spend time together. So.
Well, you know, it's funny when I said brace for impact. That's my old Navy training.
That's you. Happens. Yeah. That's you.
All of a sudden, I just went back to my old days and I went, no, wait a minute. It's not brace. It's prepare.
That's right. I'm trying to prepare people. No bracing.
Hey, Ryan. So listen, tell everybody, what are you seeing out there in the world today? You know, most of our audience, business leaders, they're out there making a difference. What are you seeing as the world is changing rapidly, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most challenging times to be a business leader. I think it's a defining moment. You know, we're coming through a crisis that is going to have some long tail implications. And I think completely transform the way we think about work. And so, there's a myriad of issues from disruption and technology, competitive forces, globalization, supply chain challenges. But, one of the big ones, this whole great resignation, or I like to think of it as a reset, actually.
Yeah, it's a better
in our relationship. Yeah, in our relationship with work. I think there's been a bit of an existential crisis, and I think employees have a new set of expectations about the way we're going to work. So, are we coming back to the office, working remotely, hybrid, quit rates are unprecedented, and all of that during an extremely challenging, volatile time. So, and beyond that, there's some real sensitive issues related to mental health and well-being that I think are gonna rear its ugly head. And I think corporations, and particularly leaders inside them, are going to have more responsibility to take care of people in any previous time in history. So I think the role of a C-suite leader, a day-to-day line leader is fundamentally being transformed right now. And that creates a host of challenges, but also some real opportunity for the organization that leans into it.
I love what you talked about is the responsibility, right, of leadership. I'm seeing, I like to talk about culture, right? I know you talk a lot about culture too. This idea of a culture of excellence, but also a culture of caring. That's what, in Blue Angels, we said culture of excellence, right? But it was also this culture of caring where you really understand why you're doing things. And one of the things I'm so impressed with, and by the way, I'm sure everyone will be looking up your YouTube channel. You got a ton of subscribers. There's all kinds of cool stuff out there. But I was most impressed with how much you connect back to purpose, people's hearts. Why are we doing this? How to make an impact as a leader? What drove you that direction? What is driving you that direction with purpose?
Well, because I think it's required ultimately to drive the performance of an organization. I think purpose-driven, values-led organizations ultimately are in a better position to, thrive into the future. And it's changing. You look at like PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? Their 2021, C-suite survey, culture is more important to performance than strategy in the operating model, according to almost 80% of the C-suite surveyed. So we're in this moment in time where, how you do things and who you do them with are paramount to success. And you touched on a word that I talk about a lot. It's responsibility. Part of my premise is that leadership isn't a job. It's a responsibility. And it's not about us. It's about helping other people become the very best they're capable of being. It's about humility, sacrifice, service, love, compassion, commitment, empathy, understanding, and decisiveness. And, so the job is changing, and it's ultimately, you got to move more toward what people want. And, part of the premise is put people first, performance and profitability will follow. So, I think we're in a time right now where people are responding to this broken relationship. It's pretty clear the way we've been working isn't working. And I think the Great Resignation is more of a leadership crisis than anything else. So there's a call to action for values-led, purpose-driven leadership to step forward and create some impact. I think that's a big part of what I talk about.
Yeah, I like what you said about the Great Resignation. I actually see it as an opportunity for companies and leaders, right? Especially the ones that are able to connect that purpose and a purpose higher than self with, the whoever is working with them or for them too. I was thinking back on the Blues, Ryan. We didn't have a problem with people resigning. Our challenge was, how do you scale greatness, right? Because you have all these people coming in. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a third of my team was new every year. Oh, wow. And that wasn't because they were resigning, just the opposite. We were bringing new people in, and you were rotating to new jobs and new roles. Half the leadership, of those 6 pilots, half of them are new every year. So what was really interesting, and that's why I want to get your comment on this, is we found a process and a mindset or a culture that actually allowed us to be in this constant state of training, renewal, getting new people in. And I'm thinking about a high growth situation, right? Which a lot of these companies are experiencing. So how does, how does that relate to you, what I just said?
Yeah, so I think interesting. And I think it's certainly consistent when you see the churn that we're experiencing right now. I just got off the phone with a client, and we're preparing for an event. He said, Ryan, we're bringing people together on our management team, and a third of the people, not only are they new, they haven't met any of their colleagues.
Right.
We've been working remotely. Right. So here's a situation where companies are experiencing that, and people have never met in person. They've only seen each other through a camera lens. And so it's different. And what it's requiring is more commitment, time, and more effective communication from management. So, you have to invest in defining these things and creating some standards of excellence. And then you have to hold yourself and other people accountable to them. And I'm sure that was your experience, and certainly was mine when I was an executive in a Fortune 500 company. And that's ultimately how you get results, is you have to create alignment and inspire people to feel like they're contributing to something larger than themselves. Yeah. And as disparate as the workforce is, creating some of that connectivity and influencing culture, it's just, there's a new set of challenges around it. And to your point, organizations and leaders that step up and meet those challenges have an opportunity.
Yeah. Hey, I like connection. Let's, two things I want to dive into, because everybody, at least there's so many millions of people that are aware of your happiness coffee video. And we were talking about it a little bit before. I actually just watched it earlier. It's just so dang cool. Let's talk about that, but also where you came from, right? Because I love the IHOP story of moving, and now you're making such a big difference. So dive into one of those to give the audience a good impression of who the real Ryan Estis really is.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So the coffee story, it's a unique one. We could probably attach the Goalcast video in the show notes.
Oh, that'd be great. We will.
Yeah, it's really the story about a barista that I met on Christmas Eve in the Minneapolis Airport, and she was authentic and unique, and created an immediate connection. And when I asked her about it, I said, I watched her work. I walked away, and I was so just mesmerized by her, and I was observing her work, and I went back and I asked her, what's your secret to this? And, of course, her infamous answer is, well, I'm not serving coffee. I'm pouring happiness into people's lives. And, she had thought about what she was doing, and back to impact, right? She was expressly interested in making those few seconds of connection matter. And, I've taken that with me. I think about it, when we go speak to it at an event or an audience, and you and I are doing some of the same kind of work, for the most part, that's the one moment in time I'm going to get to look into that person's eyes. Yeah. Or that's the one moment in time I'll be in the same room with the majority of those people. And I want to be prepared for impact and leave an impression just the way Lily did on me. And, the thing about it is, you'll see this in the video, but, I was at the airport that day. I wasn't in a great place, going back home to Ohio on Christmas Eve. And a few months prior to that holiday, got some real tough medical news about my dad. And, I knew going home, it was a terminal diagnosis. And I knew going home that, that was going to be our last holiday together. And I won't ever forget that cup of coffee. And I certainly have never forgotten Lily. She still works at the Minneapolis Airport. Wow. It was inducted into the Customer Service Hall of Fame. I got to go give a speech as part of the kind of ceremony. And we've built a really nice friendship. And I've been in touch with Starbucks about her, and she's received lots of recognition. But, for me personally, yes, the video was good for my business, but that's not the point. The point is, it's been an absolute privilege to share her light with the world. I'm just the messenger. I've been bestowed with the privilege of talking to other people about who she is and the impact she has. And she's a gift. So it's been a fun journey to stay connected to her.
How do you, when you're with your audiences, give me some story about how do you build connection for them, right? When you talk about connection, we all know we need connection. What's some techniques you use to build connection?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. I think preparation is really important. So I would say there's two keys to making an authentic connection with the audience. One is its relevance, right? It's not about me. This is their hour, their half day, their day. So it really is developing some awareness and insight about who they are, what their challenge and opportunity is, what's most important to them at this particular moment in time. So, I don't give the same speech twice because I'm feeling into what's most relevant. Then the second part is something I refer to as emotional resonance. And I believe that when people are inspired, when they're moved emotionally, it's easier for them to confront themselves and commit to the change that's going to drive the result that they want. Change is hard. And it's easy to, at an event, to be inspired in the room or to get energized or excited. And then you go to dinner and happy hour and you do breakouts the next day and you play 2 rounds of golf and your wife comes and you extend the trip. And then 7 days later, you get back to the office and you're digging out of email. And there was some guy on the first day and I took some notes, but I'm back. And so, a big part of what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap between what happens at the conference and what happens at 8:01 a.m. when you walk back into the business. It's getting people into a state of action orientation. So before I ever leave, I like people making decisions and commitments while I'm there. Like, we feel good now, let's make a decision, let's make a commitment. What do we want? What are we going to do differently? And go get it. And that provides, sort of that bridge into action back into the business.
So you do that while on stage, right?
I'll do it right. I will do it right in the room. Yep.
And give me some techniques, because that's so important. One of the challenges is what you just said. People can be inspired. By the way, definition, how do you differentiate between motivation and inspiration? Or do you?
Yeah, so motivation wanes, right? Like, I mean, if I'm relying on motivation to exercise every day, I'm going to be in big trouble. So, and part of what I have to do is create systems of accountability, right? So what inspires me is something larger than myself. Like, who else is it going to impact? How am I going to feel? What's the commitment for? And by the way, another good way to create some inspiration is, what are the consequences if this doesn't get done? What if I don't exercise? What's my health going to be like? Right. What's my health going to be like in a year? What's it going to be like in 5 years? Project that out 10 years. What kind of quality of life am I going to have? How's it going to affect people that care about me and the people I care about, my relationships, my business? So all of those things. And so, yeah, we will do some of this in the room. So I find the pace we're working today and how distracted and overwhelmed people have been through the last 24 months, we often don't take enough time for reflection, right? So giving people just a little bit of space to thoughtfully consider a question like, who am I becoming? Or how do I want to be remembered by the people I work with?
Yeah.
And for leaders, using some framework to create a personal leadership vision where they actually make some decision or put some thought into, hey, when I'm my best version of myself, this is who I'm going to be. This is what I stand for. This is what people can expect from me. And this is the impact I'm going to have. And then you use that as a true north, as a compass to guide you, even when it's hard, even when it's challenging, even when there's stress. And I think some of that type of work. So, my keynotes, workshops, they're interactive and they're action oriented. I want to give people things that they can take and go use to see immediate results. So, there's a dose of inspiration for sure, but there's also some ideas I hope that people are immediately able to leverage.
Well, I've seen that in your work. It's incredible. And I think that's the key, right? Is post-event, what action are people going to take? And I just learned something, and that is try to get the commitments right there on stage. Do you do that by just having them reflect, or do you have them interact?
So reflect, reflect, commit, share. Right. So it's that's the process. So typically in a keynote, from a closing keynote, one of my last insights will be, okay, we're going to develop a TAN plan, take action now. So based on what you want to accomplish in 2022 and the time we spend here together, what are 2 or 3 ideas you could take and say, all right, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to go do that differently. I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to try that technique. I'm going to, make my 2 connections, or whatever it is for you. It's going to be different for everybody. But think about it, jot 1 or 2 things down, and we'll give everybody a minute to do that. Reflect and say, all right, we've been at this conference for 2 days. Now it's about time to go do something. What are you going to go do? And so, and then the nice thing is, turn to the person next to you. You take a minute to share. They take a minute to share. You trade contact information and you connect in 30 days and check in. How you doing? Now you've got an accountability partner. And, if it's in the same organization, you can imagine you got 400 leaders there. All of a sudden, boom, 400 action plans are moving into the business in concert on Monday morning. That creates momentum, right? That's the flywheel effect. So, and when you share your goal with somebody you care about, the odds of actually accomplishing it improve by 65%. So it's a real catalyst. Don't keep your big ideas to yourself. Share them with someone you care about who's going to hold you accountable, right?
Yeah. Hey, here's a one. You can try this. It's worked really well for me, mostly on the workshops, right? But I can do it in some keynotes too. I try to get people connect with a basic question of the who am I? And why am I here? Have you ever used that? Because Ryan, it's amazing when you get people to actually think about, how they define themselves as compared to how the world defines them. What are,
yeah, I mean, those are beautiful questions. One, I wrote an article, early on in the pandemic called "Who Am I Becoming?" And it was such a disruptive force, certainly for our business, but for a lot of people, personally, professionally, kids out of school, people were worried, loved ones, my mom, all these things, right? And I thought, okay, with all of the stress and pressure, I want to make decisions today that I'm proud of in 6 or 12 months. And how am I going to use this space and time? Who am I becoming? And so that was a thought-provoking question, and I have used that with audiences, and it's an opportunity for people to check in and really consider, hey, am I on the right track? And if not, what are some things I need to do to course correct? And I'm also a big fan of when it comes to prioritizing and creating momentum and moving toward desired outcomes, of identifying the barriers. There are things we want in life, and then there are things that get in the way of the things we want. I don't have enough time. Well, my kids are in activities, and so I can't do this. There are these things, and I'm really fond of developing something I call it, and I borrowed it from a mentor of mine. He calls it a quit list. He said, there are some things that are getting in the way of the things you want most, and it's kind of this idea of delayed gratification, right? He said, don't forego what's most important to you for what feels good right now. He's like, yeah, dropping in on the couch and watching 3 hours of CNN and ordering a pizza might feel good, but that's getting in the way of what you want, brother. And, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to have a great business and you want to change the world, maybe 3 rounds of golf when you're starting your business a week isn't the recipe for optimal success. Maybe you retire those clubs for a year or two and bring that back in once you have the momentum you want. And so it was just a way to frame up and really prioritize, because it's easy to be mediocre at a whole bunch of stuff. But if you want to be exceptional, right, at a couple of things like I do and did, then you have to understand what's getting in the way and prioritize.
That delayed gratification. I was at church one day and a pastor used that definition for discipline. And it finally struck because, when I hear discipline, I think this is going to be tough. I don't like it. I got to be disciplined, overcome. And all of a sudden he totally reframed my mind with what you just said. No, discipline is delayed gratification, right? Now I want to be disciplined as compared to not.
Yeah, well, I know you're pretty disciplined, and so I think, but look, I think it's a reminder for all of us, right? It's easy for all of us to get comfortable and complacent, and then miss opportunity in the world. And so these systems, these routines and rituals or systems of accountability are just ways to put us in a position to get what we want and create impact for others, which is a big part of what leadership is all about.
Yeah, I want to jump into some of those rituals, but first off, I got a question: resiliency. I saw you speak a lot about resiliency, right? Especially now, what we're going through. So, talk to me about resiliency and how do you help people develop that?
Yeah, well, the good news is resilience it's conditioning, right? It's like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more you can cultivate. And it was something that I actually spent a lot of time at the onset of the pandemic studying. I wanted to understand, okay, this is, you think we had a pretty good 10-year run, and for a lot of leaders and managers, from the Great Recession to the pandemic, that was a really good period of time in the world. It was relatively safe. There was a lot of growth, record corporate profits. And for leaders that came into management during that time, they hadn't seen a crisis like this. And so, developing thick skin of resilience. And so we actually developed this half-day workshop in partnership with the Institute of Management Studies. I taught it as a virtual course, and then obviously we offered it to our clients directly. But it forced me to really study and understand resilience. And, you can cultivate resilience in yourself just by doing hard things, by forcing yourself to get uncomfortable, right? So, and there could be a variety of things. It could be getting up at 5 a.m. every day. It could be getting up at 5 a.m, committing to write 500 words in a journal. It could be getting up at 5 a.m, writing 500 words in a journal, and then sitting in 42-degree water for 5 minutes, and on and on and on and on. And then
have you done that, by the way? Have you done the cold plunges?
I absolutely do it. Yes.
How often you do it?
I try and do it once a week. We have we have a recovery center not too far from my house. I've actually written about them on the blog called Peak Lab, and they have the cryo, they have the cold plunging. So you do hot, cold therapy and guided breath work. And it's intense, and it's a suffer fast while you're doing it, but it's conditioning, right? It's conditioning to, it teaches you how to calm your nervous system down during stress, breathe through an uncomfortable situation, and regulate yourself. And then, that's a catalyst for getting a little bit better at dealing with healthy conflict in the workplace, or having a tough conversation and not procrastinating, or holding a really talented salespeople accountable to the right behavior, collaboration, and teamwork with other people, which are things we miss all the time day to day in the workplace. And so, and particularly now virtually. So it's conditioning, right? And so we have a whole host of resilience exercises and examples and implications, and a kind of a workshop to teach leaders, to be resilient. And it's not just about the pandemic. Resilience is required to be effective going forward. When you look at the accelerated pace of change, some of the challenges that we're navigating, competitive factors, there's so much disruption and uncertainty around every corner that resilience is required to lead effectively today.
Yeah, what are some of those techniques you teach with resilience?
Yeah, so we teach courage, we teach routines and rituals, we teach self-awareness, we teach mindfulness and the ability to regulate your emotions. And And then, we help people sort of create some discipline around the way they show up, around their own personal routines and rituals, and then how they lead effectively on a team. So it's really, to create a culture of accountability and performance, it starts with you. I'm a big fan of saying that leaders go first. And if you're gonna talk about accomplishing big goals or doing hard things and inspire your team, the next words out of your mouth should be, here's what you're going to get from me. And creating some consistent, clearly defined expectations about what people are going to receive from you as the leader, and then delivering on that behavior consistently is really where accountability starts. It starts with you. So we create frameworks for all of that, a personal leadership vision and an action plan to cultivate resilience and to create a culture of performance and accountability. I think that's just what's required today.
I was watching one of your videos about feedback, right? And I think that's so incredible. We call it the debrief on the Blues. Glad to be here. Debrief, significantly different. But I agree with you. Accountability, absolutely critical. So you got to have a mechanism to get that, right? And I love when you say the leader goes first. That's exactly what happens on the Blues. The leader starts first with how they appreciated the event, what they thought about, was there anything that they could have done better? So it's an inward look for an outward result first, right? And then acknowledging others, right? So that's kind of how we started our feedback loop. How do you start it? How do you do it?
Yeah, one outstanding feedback mechanism we teach is just sort of an invitation to self-awareness, just auditing yourself, right? And so we use this a lot in sales organizations or in our sales training, and we audit every call, every touch point with the customer is an opportunity to add value and advance a relationship. So every touch point deserves an audit, right? What went well? Yep. What could we have done differently, or should we have done differently, which really helps preparation. And then the third thing, did we get the commitment and advance the relationship? And ultimately, a signed contract should be the conclusion of an expertly, logically managed decision cycle. But you've got to be putting yourself in a position to earn the commitment and moving the relationship forward incrementally. So that's one really popular, I would say, feedback mechanism or self-awareness mechanism. And look, sales leaders need to use that in coaching with their reps, right? It's, that's the way to do it. And feedback is a gift. I mean, we encourage leaders and C-level leaders, to get 360-degree feedback from their people. I think that, we all have blind spots, right? And, we all make mistakes. And so to be able to receive feedback and to ask those kinds of questions, I think just is important now. And employees want to give it. They want that kind of relationship now, that open two-way communication with their manager. So the manager that has a dose of humility and is willing to invite that conversation can actually build a lot more trust and a lot more safety in the context of a relationship, which are two hallmarks of high-performing teams.
Oh, let's hit it. So you said trust and safety. Two hallmarks, okay? I agree with you 100%, right? So where did you find that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, there's research around that. I think Gartner has some real good research on psychological safety, and so does McKinsey. And they're not the same thing. They're related. Trust is about consistency in the relationship. Like, I can count on you, John, right? Like when we're going to do a podcast at 2, we're doing the podcast at 2 and we're both on at 2. Safety is a little different. Safety is, it's okay for me to have a voice, a point of view, and an opinion. And I feel safe in expressing that. And I'm allowed to take intelligent risks. I'm given some autonomy and discretion to make decisions into my job. And even if I make a mistake, that's not going to be treated punitively, right? Like I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm advancing, I'm aligned. I have the best interests of everyone in mind. So that, they're correlated, right? And they're both important. Psychological safety is really important right now, especially during a period of instability and uncertainty like the one we're navigating.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is I call them the 5 dynamics. And by the way, the first one on an effective debrief is a safe environment. But just like you talked about, it's not the physical safe environment, which, as of course we have to do. All right.
Of course. Yeah.
Understood. It's this psychologically safe environment. And I found the way you establish that is with respect, right? We respect everybody in the organization to do that. How did you cultivate those elements when you're working with companies? And here's a question, because you talk about barriers, right? A lot of times in sales, they're just going to the next deal, right? What's the next one? What's the next one? So how do you get people to understand the power of the feedback, the power of the debrief? How do you overcome the question, hey, I don't have time?
Well, yeah. So the barrier on I don't have time is one that I like to address aggressively, because it's the biggest pushback you'll get from a leader around investing more time with people, around doing audits and debriefs, around having this kind of proactive communication. And when someone says I don't have time, then I would say, you're not properly correlating what the job is. That investment of time is the job. Cultivating these high trust, safe, high value relationships is paramount to leadership. And so even if you're, running a territory, or you're responsible for production, or you have other responsibilities, that has to be a big component of the job. I think every direct report deserves a future directed one-on-one conversation with their manager once every 30 days. And if you're doing it less frequently than that, you're not having enough impact. So, but then, we'll challenge leaders with examples. So, tell me about a time when somebody on your team disagreed with your point of view, spoke up, and you adjusted course because of it, because they had a better idea than you. Tell me about a time recently where somebody made a mistake on your team and how you leverage that mistake as a lesson and help that employee learn. And so you start to get leaders into the context of how they manage their emotions and they make day-to-day decisions and how they deal with certain situations in their environment. And I think that's quite useful, actually.
I love the questions, Juliana. Do you do that on the workshops? I was thinking about, what's your call to action? Because, everybody who's listening to this has probably been to one of our keynotes potentially, right? And so they feel the energy. And by the way, Ryan, I can't wait for, a lot of people who are on this call to actually get to see you, because you deliver amazing value on stage. What's your call to action? And how do you get people to go from that? We talked about it earlier, that inspiration to actually taking action. What is your call to action right on stage? And then what do you follow up on?
Yeah, so the call to action on stage is to actually develop a plan in the room. So I want people to identify a couple of very specific ideas that they're going to take and immediately put into practice. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is I want people to share that with somebody that's actually going to serve as an accountability partner. And we'll have companies that facilitate and support that exercise and ask people to email, and we're all going to work on our action plans as an hour after Ryan leaves and those kinds of things. But even if people don't, so the idea of committing to that, right? And then sharing it is important. And then we have an aftercare program. We invite people to join our Prepare for Impact community. And then we support every keynote with a portfolio of content resources. It could be articles, videos, follow-up content that correlates to the information we shared and gives people both supporting reinforcement and a deeper dive into the ideas. So that's sort of the way we've approached it. And I think it reverberates, because part of my mission is, I want the message and the impact to last way after the meeting ends. Like, it's not about what happens in the room, it's about what you go do.
Yeah, I love that word, aftercare. Is that what you call it?
We call it aftercare.
Oh man, I love it. Hey, give me a quick story. Let's go back. We didn't do this in the beginning, but tell me a little bit about your background. I know about it, but what got you to where this is your passion? What got you to make the leap that you've made?
It's a great question. So a couple of key things, I think, probably themes in my life. Both my parents were school teachers, so I had a little bit of teaching gene in me.
45 years, right? Is that what?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. So I grew up in just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, small town. And as I got out of college and into my first job, I was in a sales job, and 9 months, I hadn't made a sale, which meant I was about to get fired and have to move back into my parents' basement and sell baseball cards for beer money. That's where I was headed. It's a true story. And I caught a break. I accidentally, and really accidentally, ended up at a Jim Rohn seminar. And for, I mean,
Well, no, I've heard of him. I've never met him.
Okay.
Was it pretty amazing?
Yeah, I mean, it changed my life. I went for the free happy hour. I thought I was going to blow this thing off at the break. I mean, I was 23 years old. And very quickly, I was borrowing a pen and paper, and I just, the exposure. And, he started rattling off books like, The Richest Man in Babylon and Think and Grow Rich and The World's Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. That was the beginning of starting my own library. And I got it. I dove in. I mean, I bought his books on tape. I bought these other 3 books. This book led me to that book. Within 2 years, I was the #1 salesperson in the company. And wow. My trajectory just changed. And that meant eventually I moved into management. Eventually I was running the entire sales organization. We were acquired by a Fortune 500 company. So I was working there as our chief strategy officer. And I started speaking as part of that job. It was really kind of thought leadership marketing strategy. We were doing it to promote the brand and the business and acquire clients. I got good at it and I loved doing it. And I just got to a point where I wanted to have a broader impact in the world. And when the Great Recession happened, it wasn't unkind to our business. Our business was going sideways, multiple rounds of layoffs. And in January of 2009, sort of at the height of the thing, I was like, I'm going to make my move. It was a sort of a wild time to start an expert business, right? Like speakers were looking for jobs. I'm like, nope, I'm going the other way. But it was one of those now or never moments, right? Like, there's never a perfect time to chase a dream. And you have to get a little inconvenient and a little disciplined. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start at the bottom in the worst possible conditions. And in a couple of years, when things get better, I'll be there. I'll be ready. All my stuff will be right. And I'll make the mistakes early and I'll just, really run this thing out. I'm going to give it a couple of years, everything I've got. And by 2011, 2012, I was there, the market turned and, the rest they say is history. I never looked back. And single best decision in my professional life. I don't regret it at all. And I love the work that we get to do. It's a total privilege. I don't take it for granted for a day. And, at the end of every year, we kind of do our audit and evaluate everything. I'm like, all right, this was a pretty good year. We can keep going. And I get to do it another year, man. And, that inspires and energizes me. So it's been a lot of fun.
What would be, I loved your passion on that and taking risk at the time you did, right? What would be your advice? I just finished yesterday. I was actually in Florida giving a keynote, and afterwards I'm walking by the pool and somebody grabs me, and they were at the event, right? And they had their 2 daughters there, the husband, wife, and their 2 daughters. And they said, thank you. And I said, oh, well, thank you. But what resonated, right? I always ask that question, Yeah, what resonated with them? And they said they're glad to be here. The gratitude. They actually asked me to speak more about gratitude, right? But here's what blew me away. The girl, and she's a senior in high school. She looks up and she goes, I'm going to use glad to be here as my essay to get into college. Yeah. And I thought, wow. Number one, and then, we had a nice long conversation about, well, what impacted you? How did, what does that mean in your life? But I go, man, every kid should use something like that, because you could talk about yourself in a way of giving back, a way of giving forward, right? Of making a difference in the world. Anyhow, I just wanted to share that story because it just happened yesterday, right? And I think about all the impactful stories that you get, the people at the end of a keynote or a workshop. Can you share 1 or 2 that really moved you personally?
Yeah, I'll share 1 or 2. You talk about gratitude and impact, and I think when I first started on this journey, I wanted success so bad. I just, I didn't want to fail, right? I had this career and I segued out and it was the recession and I put a lot of pressure on myself. And for the first few years, I really made it about me. I wanted to be great on stage and I wanted to get a standing ovation. And it's not that I wasn't delivering value to the audience, but the barometer for success really was about me. And I had a few defining moments, in this job. One of them, I spoke to, it's funny how students or young people really can inspire you, I spoke to a group of dental students. They were close to finishing. It was the American Dental Association kind of graduate student event conference, and I was the closing keynote. And there was a girl there. She had 1 year left, and she told me she was kind of in the audience that day. And I got this email a year and a half later. She said, "You don't know me. I was at this thing a year and a half ago. You might not even remember." But she said, I went in there. She had so much going on in my life, so much stress, personal things. I was going to drop out of school. And I listened to you, and I decided not to quit. And I'm going to get choked up. And she had a photo in the bottom in her cap and gown with her parents, and she graduated. And, you think about, man, something that you said on stage landed in somebody's heart, and they went on and did something extraordinary. And now they're going to go out and have an impact on a bunch of other people in their own life. And to me, I label that now exponential impact, right? And she is out in the world, touching people, healing people. And so what it reminded me was, I don't have anything to prove. I'm enough just as Ryan. What I have is something to give. And you want to be a speaker, and a leader. It's an act of service, right? It's not about me anymore. I've moved beyond that. So, there are a few other stories like that are emotionally resonant, and it honestly, it makes it all worth it. All the air miles, the hotels, the missed flights and connections, the red eyes, the grind and the hustle. I keep a folder of those messages, and it reminds me of why I'm doing this and who I'm doing it for, because it's not about me, it's about her.
It's so funny. You talked about a folder of those messages. I just had Molly Fletcher on my,
she's great.
Isn't she cool?
Yeah, she's the best.
And she talked about a folder just like that. She says, anytime she gets a good email, she just drags it into that folder. That's something I think I'm going to start doing that. I hope people listening do too.
Yeah, it's kind of analogous to this idea of, instead of having just a to-do list, have a done list, right? It's like, remind yourself of what you're accomplishing. We're so out there, right? Oh, that keynote went good, and now I'm out here, and now I'm going on to the next thing. I think it's important for all of us just to get still for a moment and say, hey, remind yourself, why are you doing this? What's this about? Who's it for? And in moments where maybe that imposter syndrome creeps in, or a little self-doubt, starts to overwhelm you, you go into the folder and you say, all right, I'm really making a difference here. And man, if I could make a difference for her, who's next? And just remind yourself, it's good to take inventory and stock of what we've accomplished. And I think that's an important task that a lot of people ignore. So great advice from Molly, and it's something I've used for a long time.
Hey, I was thinking about gratitude, by the way, do you speak on gratitude? Is that part of what
I do? And I'll tell you, I learned a lot about gratitude. I went to this 8-day personal growth retreat, this residential program called the Hoffman Process. And I've written about it, and I was on their podcast. And gratitude, they did a lot around work around gratitude. And I called it was my formal gratitude training. So some of their principles and practice, and having a gratitude practice. And there's this cool little journal called the 5-minute journal that I've used. And it's real simple. It's like, and they have an app too. I actually go analog. I like to sit and write. That's, I'm probably dating myself, whatever, but cup of coffee and a gratitude journal and that reflection. So I will drop, depending on the talk I'm giving, I will drop people into that reflection. And the best part of that exercise when I'm doing it live is when you turn to the person next to you and share what you're grateful for, and the whole energy of the room changes, and people are showing pictures of their kids and crying. And the point is, look at what a beautiful state. Look how the energy shifted in the room in just a minute. And imagine if we consistently showed up for each other that way more often, each and every day, with that gratitude on our hearts. You have a real impact that way.
It's interesting, Ryan. You talked about the impact in the room, especially all our workshops. That's how we start, right?
It's beautiful.
It totally changes the whole room. And I just say, why are you glad to be here? And right now, initially everybody's glad to be here because they're enjoying getting back together again, right? They're trying to make connections. Right. They're doing all that, but you take them into the deeper stuff pretty quickly, right? What's important in their life and how they really want to connect. And you mentioned journaling. By the way, we just started one of the projects we've got, and it should be coming out in about a month now, is what I call the gratitude pack. So we're doing a course on gratitude, right? And one of them is this gratitude journal, right, at the end. By the way, I love the 5-minute. That is awesome one. What have you learned through journaling as to why the actual writing of something down is helpful?
I mean, it's the ultimate form of self-reflection. I mean, I have a whole closet full of journals. I can go back and, it sort of charts my journey, right? Of like where I was and where I've been and the insights and tips. So they're moments of reflection, and oftentimes they're pearls of wisdom. And so, I always have a journal around me, and, you may say something and I'll jot it down, and that'll inspire something I want to go research and think about or write. But you talked about connection a couple of times, right? And it's a huge theme of mine too, especially now, because more people feel lonely, overwhelmed, stressed, anxious. We've been disconnected, and we're coming together again, and we're grateful for it. It's almost like a reunion or a renaissance in many ways. But I do remind people, like, journaling is a moment to connect with yourself, right? And so it's a self connection. And, the gratitude exercise is a big one. Another fun one we've done, we'll do these little text message challenges. So I'll say, okay, everybody pull out your phone, mid-keynote, right? So everybody set your pens down, stop. I'm going to send a text message, and I'll give people a choice. You can either send one to somebody on your team and express gratitude and appreciation for somebody specific. So someone you're working with, you're just going to let them know you appreciate them, you're grateful for them, and why, right? Or if you want to go into the deeper end of the pool, if you're really up for playing big today, text somebody that you're close to that you love and tell them you love them, but tell them why. Yeah. And you're here at this conference because we don't do it enough. And it will be a moment of human connection that I promise you, the receiver of that message will never forget. And so the people that, it's funny because, 15, 20 minutes later, I hear the laughter in the room, and, someone will be like, my wife said, is everything okay? Is something wrong with you? Or like, you get these crazy text messages back, and, why did you make me cry at school, Mom? And like, it's this whole thing. And, it's a great way to create some camaraderie and connection in the room, but it's reinforcing a simple act of human connection. And that's a big part of what Lily is all about, and the coffee story, and why I think it resonates so deeply. It's conscious, right? It's in our awareness. You don't take it for granted. It's like, this is our moment. I'm looking in your eyes. I may never see you again, and I'm going to connect. And that's a beautiful gift.
Wow. I love that idea. And it's funny because, sometimes as a speaker, when people are on their phones, you're a little nervous. Like, I'm not keeping their attention. Sure. But I can see you afterwards, now they're laughing. They're like,
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So Ryan, maybe as we wrap this up, I could talk to you for on and on and on. There's so much. I want to do a couple things. One is I want to connect to what gratefulness in the present moment, since we're on that right now. And I want to share with you that, number one, thank you for taking this time, and thank you for all you share with your audiences, the impact that you make. Thanks for sharing a couple of ideas with everybody here today. I can't wait to try to use some of those, especially that text message. That's awesome. But thank you for your presence and your heart. Your heart is what comes through with your incredible knowledge. So I just want to say that I'm grateful for you being with us right now. Over to you, buddy.
Yeah, well, thank you. And honestly, I'll reciprocate. I was really looking forward to this conversation. My team at Three Ring Circus, my partners, they all spoke so highly of you. And obviously I'm familiar with the work you do from the platform, but to have an opportunity to drop in and have this meaningful conversation. And, you sent me some beautiful swag on the front end. So I'm working out in my glad to be here shirt. My trainer was like, he's like, are you really glad? I'm like, no, but I'm wearing it because John sent it to me. It's a dope shirt. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'll fake it until I get into it. But yeah, And honestly, I'm grateful for the audience. This is really, it's really back to kind of the connection to them. And I hope, this conversation inspires a few people to either go send a text message to someone they love, or, cultivate their resilience muscle, or prepare a little differently as a leader, or do some self-inspection. And to me, it's always a gift when people are paying attention to your thinking and your ideas. And so I'm grateful for the time, your audience, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I know it won't be our last. So it's great to make the connection to you, my brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of our audience, I also try to leave with some kind of saying, some kind of quote, some kind of life message, live with that you live your life by. What would you share? Maybe you have more than one.
Yeah, I'm going to reinforce one that I think was an underlying theme of this conversation. It's don't sacrifice what you want most for what feels good right now. I think that's a really potent message. It hit me in the heart when I heard it, and I think it's just one that reminds anybody that's interested in peak performance, which a lot of your audience is, to be honest with themselves. That's the first one. And I think the second one probably is I'm going to use, a theme from my place. This is all about preparing for impact. I think at the end of all this, if we're able to look back and say, hey man, I left it a little bit better than I found it. And and it's not about impacting a million people. It could be about impacting someone in your family, or for you, the one high school student that really is aware of why she's glad to be here and puts gratitude in her life. Or for me, somebody that doesn't quit dental school and goes on to become an oral surgeon and is on a retreat, doing cleft palate surgery in a third world country. Like that to me, it's exponential impact. And if we all leave our area a little bit better than we found it, the world becomes a better place. So don't minimize your own contribution. Your daily effort actually does make the world a better place. And I think the world sorely needs it right now.
Yeah, and thank you for being out there doing that. I will have in the show notes not only how to get a hold of you, but what's the best way for people to get a hold of you right now? We'll put it all in the show notes. How do people connect with you?
Yeah. So, the website's a great portal, right? It's ryanestis.com. So we've got a ton of our content on there, access to the blog. You can subscribe to the Prepare for Impact newsletter, which comes out every Sunday. And then I'm pretty active on both LinkedIn and Instagram. So I'm an open networker. Anybody that wants to follow along, join the journey. We'd love to commandeer some of your audience and include them in our community too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, join the journey. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Hey, I'm going to leave you with a mantra and then come up with one. If you have one on your own. That when you were talking, something that I've been learning, trying to live a lot, is this idea of learn, grow, give, right? And then I realized that I had the order wrong. That it starts with giving, right? And then we learn and we grow. And every morning I woke up this morning, I do my glad to be wake up. Oh, shoot, no, we're not going to end yet. I wanted to hear your morning routine. You talked about habits and routines, right? Give me an example of a routine that you do that would benefit others. What
So morning routine, wake up early, meditation or prayer, journal, which the journaling includes a gratitude reflection, make the bed. I got to check that box every day. That's and then if I'm really firing on all cylinders, it's exercise. I'm a subscriber of win the morning, win the day, right? So the art of the start. So you want to put yourself in a position, to be successful out of the gate, because then chaos erupts, right? All around us. And so I just want to condition myself to be the best version of myself when I hit the desk and I'm ready to go 7:30, 8 o'clock. And so, those 4 or 5 key ingredients, caffeine's in there too, make a really good cup of coffee. I got to get that going. And now I'm going to have my glad to be here shirt on during the workout, which is even better. So thanks to you. I'm going to be in the right frame of mind. But I do think routines and rituals are the foundation of success. I think so many of us got disrupted. Our routines got disrupted over the last 24 months. And if you want to accelerate momentum, you got to reclaim what you were made for, reclaim some of those rituals and routines, get back to things that put you in a position to, have some momentum. And for me, the morning routine is a big part of it. I've written about that. You could link to it in the notes too. So
Love it, man. Thanks for giving so much. Thanks for giving your wisdom to everybody. We're going to get you a call sign. Okay.
Okay.
I don't, do you have one yet? Do you
I
have
don't. I don't.
Okay. All right. We're working on it. Sugar, as you know, been working with Sugar. He's really good at this stuff. And the key on the call signs is you got to earn them, man. Sometimes.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll get you a call sign. With that,
I love it, brother.
Ryan, man, this has been great. Thanks for making such a big impact on so many people and on this podcast and in the world as a whole. So glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.